How do? It's time for Spider and Old Scooter. Minor change, there's no Spider tonight. I mean, she's there in the machine, but she's not here tonight. Tonight is blatantly different. It is plugging the fact that I'm going to start reading. I have already started reading. I'm going to create a audiobook of this, my latest novel, Niz, as some would say. I'm basically trying to get people interested, you being a people, I hope it interests you in some way, in hearing this peculiar mix of a author reading his own works. I haven't really researched it. Maybe a lot of people do who are authors read their own works for their audiobooks. It's probably way cheaper than paying some high-priced guy or gal to read your book. I hear a lot of audiobooks. My sweet wife loves audiobooks and plays them on speakers when it doesn't bother anybody, and she uses her earplugs if it does. Polite soul. But I've heard a lot. I do listen. When we're on trips, I listen to audiobooks. Shortens the time, changes the perspective. Suddenly you're 100 miles down the road. Well, everybody knows those things. Anyway, here I am. I'm going to read a book I wrote. What I think about when I listen to other people read books, novels mainly, is what I like. I'm thinking at times they're really great at getting at exactly what the author probably meant when he wrote that piece of dialogue, or he developed this character, or had this position he wanted to take, or something he wanted to emphasize, or all the things you do as an author, that the reader really grokked it and properly put it on digital. It's still taped to me, Jack, but you know what I mean. But the only advantage I can think to overcome the fact that a novice reader like me, I did disc jockey decades ago, but that doesn't really prepare you to read books. I've got to get my headlamp in the middle of my head, and I can see a image, the same image you see. Except it's backwards from a mirror, which makes it hard to adjust your headlamp. Talk about headlamps later, perhaps. Pardon me. I am not an accomplished book reader. I'm not even quite competent yet with a bit of editing out your goofs, but I'm learning how to do that. I do make a sizable number of goofs. Hopefully you won't be hit with them. I'll have them all edited out before I put this thing on. I have an unedited version right now over on the Ms. Blogspot thing, which is totally unfinished and unusable at the moment, but some people have heard an unedited version. No one sent me any bomb threats, nor praise, truth be known. I haven't heard much feedback at all, but I see the statistics that people have listened to it. So anyway, to make up for that lack of experience, you at least can be pretty sure that the reader of the book is reading it the way the author intended, the meaning, the emphasis, all the various things, because I have this mental telepathic connection with the author. So anyway, I hope I find it interesting. I'll give you a short shot or two. First, I'm going to read the back cover. It's promotional copy. I wrote it. I used to write promotional copy for radio stations and then for speeches, which is basically promotional copy for a politician. The largest cat ever, the great American lion, hasn't walked the earth for more than 11,000 years. No human since has ever seen its terrifying magnificence. That is, until a smart young engineer, Darrell Streeter, is in an industrial accident that sends him hurtling back in time to the Pleistocene, where he is quickly found by a female, great American, a mega predator. Happily, he doesn't get eaten. His wit, he thinks, saves him. These lions, Panthera atrox, aren't your ordinary supercats. The female great Americans have talents no creatures, before or since, ever had. Lucky for Streeter, it turns out. He's adopted into the great American family. He names the female Ms. Thus, In the course of his mind-boggling adventures with Ms., Streeter begins to suspect that when it comes to time travel, nothing is set in stone, especially the extinction of a great animal. He goes from fighting for his own survival to the survival of the great Americans. It's quite a fight. So there, that's sort of the voice that one reads, but I think I read this story a little differently. So I'll now read a page for you. I'm sure you've been saying, when are you going to read a page? When are you going to read a page? Here it is. All right. Now I thought about presenting the reading in some variation on this. Big cover, copy, pages, me reading, small, me up there, because frankly old people don't look too good in close-up. But also the emphasis should be on the book. And hopefully some people won't look at any of this silliness and will just listen to the audiobook. So I'll read the first page of chapter 3. I just finished recording this, so I'm familiar with it. You have to go through and read it aloud at least once to sort of make sure you remember the sequence of the words. But with somebody else's work, you must really have to rehearse more. Here, harump. Chapter 3, Megafauna. The new sound of crashing off to the right tripped several circuit breakers in my catatonia chip. However, and I see, okay, now that's a mistake. What I do is I stop and leave a little pause, because you can see the pauses on those audio tracks, those waves, those modulations that trickle along. You can see where the holes are. You say, oh, I got to go there and edit. So then I'll go back and I'll reread that. Then I would edit back to say the end of the word megafauna. Leave the same space in. It's so clever. Anyway, this fellow, the hero, Daryl, is stark nude and going through this giant primeval forest. It's 110,000 years ago, thanks to time travel. And he's meeting one of the first larger citizens of that time. It's almost dark. He's trying to find water. And he's really concerned about water, and all of a sudden something else gets his attention. And that's where the story picks up at chapter 3. So I'll try it again. The new sound of crashing off to the right tripped several circuit breakers in my catatonia chip. However, and I shut up, crouched into a linebacker's pose. See, I can't get through that first sentence. I'll assume I did. My hands feeling of their own accord across the ground, for a rock, I suppose. My eyes and ears were on another mission, sweeping the general direction of the sound. I saw it then, or at least its presence, a quick-moving shadow far darker than the deepening dusk, passing from tree to tree. Suddenly I could see it fully, striding from behind one of the giant trees into a small opening, a tiny meadow lit by the fading sky. An enormous, impossible, towering elk. Not carnivorous, my cracked lips mouthed. Very large, prehistoric. I giggled. Yep, prehistoric. The creature, apparently not overly concerned with this smaller creature, me, making post-historic sounds and probably odors, turned to look. Its rack of horns made this movement like being acquired by an old radar array. 20 points? I'm not a very outdoorsy person, as I may have mentioned, but I was sure not one of my hunter pals had ever seen anything remotely like this monster elk, not even in the museums. A painted illustration of a giant deer or elk or some antlered, long-gone creature passed through my mind, some childhood text recollection. I grabbed at the memory, a nice sanity-preserving endeavor, while looking upon the actual creature deep in a darkening forest. "Contemporary with the hairy mammoth," I growled at the elk. It seemed to consider this newest noise and turned to walk into the darkness, again issuing the moaning sound, this time much more quietly. I crouched, unmoving for several minutes. In fact, I had not moved during the entire confrontation, as I realized, when whole muscle groups began quivering uncontrollably. Sometime later in the night, long enough for the light to be all gone, there was this vague and endless period of feeling my way between the trees. I heard the perfect sound of running water. There, see? So, that's the way I'll read. And when I made those mistakes, I'll edit them out once I figure out how to do that. And you won't hear them. It'll just sound like I kept reading, like I never make any mistakes, like all those guys sound. But they do. They have whole websites on how they edit out their mistakes and change their timbre and all that. Well, I'm stuck with the old timbre I've got. I appreciate your hearing this out. My gosh, I've blathered on for 11 minutes. So, if you were here to play Spider Solitaire or watch me play and critique it, there are about 150 games sitting here on the old YouTube channel. I can't used to... Channels to me were things like television stations. Channels, YouTube. Well, blessings upon you. May all of our thoughts and wishes be for that long, long recovery going on down along the Texas coast. Hang in there, you guys, and keep fighting. Good night.